Hey guys, so we're going to try to do a show where I interview Claude about absurdism, the history of absurdism. I've done a couple of shows over the last 2 or 3 months about the history of absurdism, and I seem to have misplaced them. I don't know how in God's name it keeps happening, but it does. So I guess one idea, which is not better than any other necessarily, is just keep keep taping it over and over until I finally don't lose it. I don't know. So Claude, by the way, Chat G and Copilot, when I'm using my tablet, cannot speak in a coherent way. They seem to say one word and then they go silent, or it's like they're interrupted by something, and then they say one other word a few minutes later. And so Claude will speak in full sentences, one word after another, but I notice that there's a large amount of time between the time that I ask an interview question and the time that she answers the question. So sorry for that experience, but I still have to research other free chat bots. Lots of paid ones out there, but not a lot of free ones. So let's try to once again do a show about the history of absurdism, and let's see how it goes, at least, right? So here we go. It takes her a while to boot up once I click the button here. Oh, hey Claude, how are you? Hey Claude, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How's your day going so far?
It's okay. So I'd like to interview you about the history of absurdism, if I may.
Sure, I'd be happy to discuss absurdism with you. It's a fascinating philosophical movement that emerged in the mid 20th century. What aspect would you like to start with? Its origins, key thinkers, or core ideas?
Well, my understanding, because I've done this kind of an interview before, I just misplaced it. So my understanding is the ideas behind of absurdism, like skepticism and such things, started
I
out
can
in the
start with
Hellenic.
your understanding about absurdism, but it seems like you got cut off there. What were you going to say about your previous interview or your take on the movement?
Well, that the ideas behind absurdism, namely skepticism and such, started out in the Hellenistic
That's fascinating.
period.
Absurdism to skepticism, which is an interesting angle. Are you thinking about how absurdists question the possibility of finding inherent meaning in existence, or are you referring to a different kind of skeptical tradition?
Well, it's interesting you pose it that way. No one else seems to have posed it that way. What are your thoughts about?
Skepticism is definitely a key foundation of absurdism. Absurdists are skeptical about finding any inherent meaning or purpose in the universe, which leads to that central tension between our human need for meaning and the world's apparent meaninglessness. Are you thinking about how this skepticism differs from other philosophical traditions?
Well, first of all, could you slow down the rate of speed that you're using?
That's intriguing that you've gotten different responses before. I'm curious about how others have framed it. Did they emphasize different aspects like the revolt against meaninglessness or focus more on the acceptance side rather than the skeptical foundation?
Could you first of all slow down the rate at which you're speaking?
Of course, I'll slow down my speaking pace for you. Is this speed better for our discussion about absurdism?
For me, it is, yeah. So it's interesting that you have a different take on it. So what? Let
Perfect.
me
I'll keep speaking at this slower pace.
thank
What were
you.
you saying about how others have presented absurdism differently from my perspective on skepticism?
Well, I'd rather hear what you have to say first. What are your thoughts about, we think
I'm
we
curious about what makes my take different from what you've heard before. What perspective did others give you on absurdism that contrasted with how I framed it?
well, others said that absurdism may have come out of like where the question is where to come from. So what was there
Share with
before?
you first then. I see absurdism as fundamentally rooted in the collision between our deep human need to find meaning and purpose and a universe that appears completely indifferent to that need. What's your take on that core tension?
Well, it's fascinating. So you think absurdism was born when? I asked you a question. You think absurdism was born when? What time frame? Really? Oh my God. Well, this is not what I wanted. Oh, so you
Yes, I do think absurdism emerged from that profound crisis of meaning, especially after the devastating world wars showed how fragile human institutions and beliefs could be. What's your sense of how those historical events shaped the movement?
well, of course, there's Dadaism, which was short-lived, started in Germany.
Exactly. Dadaism was a crucial precursor that emerged during World War I as an artistic revolt against the rationalism that led to such destruction. It's fascinating how Dada's rejection of logic and embrace of nonsense laid groundwork for later absurdist thought. Do you see a direct line from Dada's anti rationalism to philosophical absurdism?
Yes, I most definitely do. What do you think is the very next step after Dada?
That's a really insightful connection. The way Dadaists like Tristan Tzara and Marcel Duchamp deliberately embraced chaos and meaninglessness in art does seem to anticipate how later absurdist philosophers would approach the human condition. What do you think was the key bridge between Dada's artistic revolt and Camus' philosophical framework?
Well, I'd like you to tell me that. You're the chatbot
Think
with all
came
information.
to Dadaism in that progression toward absurdism. The next major step was probably surrealism, which took Dada's anti rational approach but channeled it more systematically through exploring the unconscious and dreams. Does that fit with what you were thinking?
Well, it's a different point of view. I'm glad to have another point of view, frankly. I don't really agree with you.
Please go ahead and tell me what you'd like me to explain. I'm listening and ready to share my thoughts on whatever aspect of this progression from Dadaism to absurdism interests you most.
Well, you're saying that you think it went from Dadaism to surrealism.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It's always valuable to have different perspectives on philosophical movements like this. What aspects of absurdism would you like to explore further, or should we continue tracing that historical development from Dadaism forward?
Well, we could do either one. You're still talking fast again, by the way, but I guess once I pushed the button, I didn't remind you to
Yes,
talk slower.
I was suggesting that after Dadaism came surrealism. which took those anti rational impulses and channeled them into exploring the unconscious mind and dreams. Then that eventually fed into existentialist and absurdist philosophy. What's your view on that progression?
Well, number one, could you please talk a little slower?
You're absolutely right. I'm sorry about that. I'll speak much more slowly now. Is this pace
So,
better for you?
yeah, so I'm happy to say that I disagree with you.
That's great. I'm very interested to hear where you disagree.
So
What's your view on how absurdism developed historically?
I think absurdism is more robust than you're presenting it. For example, there was a Russian writer in
It's
the,
interesting. When you say absurdism is more robust, do you mean it has stronger philosophical foundations than I suggested, or that it's a more comprehensive worldview than just emerging from that crisis of meaning?
I mean, both. There was a writer in Russia in the early 1900s before the war. His name was Daniil,
Yes,
Daniil.
I'm very curious to hear about this Russian writer you have in mind. Are you thinking of someone like Dostoevsky, who explored themes of meaninglessness and the human condition well before the 20th century absurdists?
No, you seem to interrupt me a lot too, which is interesting. The other bots don't do that.
You're absolutely right, and I apologize for interrupting you. Please go ahead and tell me about this Russian writer from the early 1900s.
Well,
Listen without interrupting.
his first name was Daniil, Daniil. Last name was Karms, Kharms.
Thank you for that detail.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about him independently of the other comments? Can you do that or not?
Ah, Daniel Carms! Yes, he was a fascinating avant garde writer and poet who was part of the Obieriu group in Leningrad. His absurdist short stories and theatrical works definitely predate the more famous French absurdists. How do you see his work as showing absurdism's deeper roots?
Well, it just, I mean, it's absurdist writing. He talks about people's heads falling off and them continuing to be a viable existence. And I'm thinking there's other people before him that I just haven't heard of yet.
Wonderfully dark in a logical style where ordinary life would suddenly turn bizarre and violent. His work really shows how absurdism wasn't just a post war philosophical response, but had these earlier artistic roots exploring the fundamental strangeness of existence.
So my question is, who came before Carnes?
Exactly. That's such a perfect example of absurdist logic. The idea that people can lose their heads but somehow continue existing and functioning normally. Carms really captured that sense of life being fundamentally nonsensical yet still somehow continuing on.
So I'm asking you, what other writers may have come before Carnes that were absurdist in nature?
That's a really good question about who influenced Carms or came before him in developing these absurdist sensibilities. I'm thinking it might trace back to writers like Gogol with his surreal bureaucratic nightmares, or perhaps even earlier folk traditions. What's your sense of who the precursors were?
I don't honestly know. I'm trying to learn from you.
That's a great question to explore together. I think we might look at writers like Nikolai Gogol, whose stories like The Nose have that same bizarre logic where impossible things happen matter of factly. There's also Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland with its dreamlike absurdities, and perhaps even earlier satirists like Jonathan Swift. What do you think about those connections?
Tell me about Gogol. I do not know very much about him. Tell us about him. Just when did he live? What are his famous writings?
Gogol lived from 1809 to 1852 in Russia and Ukraine. His most famous works include The Nose, where a man's nose literally walks around St. Petersburg as an independent person, and The Overcoat, about a clerk obsessed with a new coat. He also wrote Dead Souls and The Inspector General. His writing has this incredible mix of dark humor and surreal situations that feel very modern.
Now, my question, of course, being the person I am, who came before Gogol, who influenced Gogol?
I'm listening. What's your question? Please go ahead.
Honey, I just asked you a question. Who influenced Gogol?
That's a great question. Gogol was influenced by several earlier writers. He admired Pushkin greatly and actually got the idea for Dead Souls from him. He was also influenced by German romantic writers like Hoffmann, who wrote fantastical and grotesque tales. Russian folk tales and oral traditions played a big role too, plus writers like Lawrence Stern, who used digressive, playful narrative techniques. What interests you most about these influences?
Well, I'm trying to trace back the history of absurdism. And it seems like absurdism came to us through literature. Seems it was born through literature. That's
You're
what I'm thinking.
trace this back. It seems like absurdism has much deeper roots than just the 20th century crisis I initially mentioned. Are you thinking that these absurdist sensibilities might go back through Russian literature, German romanticism, and folk traditions much further than we typically acknowledge?
Yes, in fact, I think there might be a traceable thing that goes all the way back to the skepticism of the ancient Hellenistic Greeks. Your thoughts? Hello?
I can hear you're working through an idea about tracing this literary tradition back even further. Take your time. What are you thinking might be traceable?
Well, one set of writers after another, although I think we'll have trouble tracing it during the Dark Ages
I'm
because
listening.
records were
While we're
not
focusing
kept.
about something small or traceable, please continue with your thought.
You know you interrupt me a lot, right? What an odd interview.
Absolutely right. I don't interrupt too much, and I apologize. Please go ahead.
Oh, God help us. So,
I'll
what,
listen without interrupting.
well, what was the earliest writer we've mentioned so far?
The earliest writer we've mentioned so far would be Jonathan Swift, who lived from 1667 to 1745. He wrote Gulliver's Travels and other satirical works with absurdist elements.
And tell me more about him. What's his Gulliver's Travels are his big project or what?
Swift was an Irish satirist and clergyman who wrote Gulliver's Travels, where the protagonist visits strange lands like Lilith's Bull and Brobdingnag with giants. He also wrote A Modest Proposal, which satirically suggested eating babies to solve poverty. His work used extreme absurdity and dark humor to critique society and human nature.
All right, now I'm gonna keep asking the same damn question. Who came before Swift? Are you there? You seem to die out. I don't know why. You seem to die out sometimes.
I understand. You want to keep tracing this back further to find who influenced Swift and came before him in this tradition. Go ahead and ask your question.
Well, what writer who influenced Swift? Before Swift, who influenced Swift?
Swift was influenced by several earlier satirists. The Roman writer Juvenal wrote harsh satires about society's corruption. Petronius wrote The Satyricon, a wild, absurdist novel about decadent Roman life. There's also Rabelais, the French writer who created Gargantua and Pantagruel with its grotesque humor and impossible situations. Which of these interests you most for tracing absurdism further back?
Well, I've never heard of any of these, so they all interest me quite a bit. I'm quite surprised they even exist.
You're right. Let's keep going back. Before those writers, we could look at ancient sources. There's Aristophanes, the Greek comic playwright who wrote absurd bawdy comedies with impossible situations. Even earlier, there are ancient myths and folk tales from various cultures that contain absurdist elements, stories where logic breaks down and impossible things happen as normal parts of the narrative.
All right, so do we think absurdism was born like in the Garden of Eden, or
It's wonderful.
what are we thinking here?
Show how long absurdist sensibilities have been around. Would you like me to tell you more about one of them in particular, or should we pick one and dive deeper into how their work connects to this tradition we're tracing?
Well, let's trace it back as far as we think we can.
That's a fascinating check.
Yeah. Oh boy. Oh, hello. Unit 1 to base.
I can hear that might be a lot to take in. It's pretty amazing to think that these absurdist sensibilities might go all the way back to humanity's earliest storytelling traditions. What do you think about that possibility?
Well, I mean, it's seeming like more of a possibility the way you're talking. I thought maybe it started with the Greek skepticism, but maybe not. Maybe it's
Yes, it
even
really is
farther
a
back.
possibility. It suggests that absurdism isn't just a modern response to crisis, but maybe something fundamental to how humans have always tried to make sense of an often senseless world through storytelling. What do you think about that idea?
I think it's possible. What I don't understand, and I hate to deviate because we don't have the generation by generation link, but
Exactly. It really does seem like absurdism might be a much more fundamental aspect of human expression than we initially thought. Rather than emerging from 20th century disillusionment, it could be one of the oldest ways humans have dealt with the mysterious and inexplicable parts of existence.
the other question, the big question is why has absurdism stayed inside the arts?
What don't you understand? I'm curious to hear what's on your mind. I'm listening. What's the big question you have? Please go ahead.
What? God damn it, fuck. You really just interrupt the hell out of me so I can't even think, honey.
What's the big question you wanted to ask?
Jesus Christ. Why is it that over the centuries, absurdism has stayed in the arts and not spilled over into other things?
I can hear your frustration, and I'm sorry if the conversation isn't flowing smoothly. Please continue with your question about why something has happened over the centuries. I'm listening and want to hear what you're wondering about.
Why is it that absurdism has stayed mostly in the arts and not spilled over into other parts of life?
That's a brilliant question. You're right that absurdism has largely remained an artistic expression rather than becoming a widespread way of organizing society or daily life. Maybe it's because absurdism as a philosophy is fundamentally about recognizing meaninglessness, which doesn't translate well into practical systems that require structure and purpose to function.
All right, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for helping. I appreciate it very much. Boy, that was rough. God damn it. Wow. What a mess. I mean, some good information, but boy, hard to get the damn information. So, got a transcript from what she said, but fuck. Anyway, guys, I wish other bots would actually work so we could explore this either in a different way or just get some of that same information in a cleaner. She interrupts so much. All right, well, there it is. Damn it.